Hey there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. I want to talk about Eric Hosmer and launch angles today. And I'm going to use two extreme opposite approaches to show you the difference in what a player that achieves a high launch angle consistently on average versus one that doesn't. And the interesting thing about Eric Hosmer's approach here, this is spring training. He just obviously joined the Padres. And he was working on things that he talks about in this interview. You can find it in 30 Clubs in 30 Days on MLB.com. I love that series. And listen to some of the things that he's working on. It's the typical things you'll hear on YouTube, by the way. Right? It sounded like a YouTube elite hitting video where he's talking about barrel depth. He's talking about all kinds of things that Eric Hosmer never should have been worried about. But, he ran into the script, and that's what I call it. It's a common script that you hear now, is that you were probably told to hit down on all your life, and so we're gonna reprogram you now to swing up. Now listen, there's certainly room for that in general, but a player like Eric Hosmer should have never been approached the way he was approached about this. The problems with Eric Hosmer and his launch angle are very obvious, and I'm going to point those out today using Joey Gallo as an extreme example of launch angles, the guy that elevates balls, hits moonshots, right? And certainly this isn't a talk about who has better mechanics. I think Eric Hosmer has proved over his career he can hit balls hard. Joey Gallo is an up-and-comer. He has hit 81 home runs in the last 2 years, but he could probably use some more barrels. And but here's the main issue here. This is what you see when you search Eric Hosmer and launch angle and just Eric Hosmer in general. You'll see stories like this where the Padres should be very worried about Eric Hosmer's declining swing or declining power or whatever you're going to find. It says Hosmer is currently pacing for the third lowest launch angle in the Statcast era. Only N. Desmond, D. Gordon are lower. In the neighborhood of his degree as hitters you would consider lacking power. So his swing is very flat. He needs to elevate balls more. Right, and this is in Eric Hosmer, as it says here, is thinking about swing playing, right? And you can see in the again in this interview, he's talking about it. And he's talking about how he's told to hit down on balls all his life, so he's trying to elevate balls more. And so somebody stepped in and they gave him the same script that everybody's getting these days. Well, you're not getting enough barrel depth. You got to do this with your bottom hand arm, and everything's going to be okay, right? And I'm going to show you today that that while some of these things mechanically could certainly have been improved, that certainly didn't help him elevate the balls. As you see here, after all of that, my coaches, he does the whole. My coaches used to tell me to hit down on balls, and he kind of snickers. And here is his launch angle average this season, negative 1.4. And the league average was 12.4. That's eye-opening here. Whoa, that's different. And then, so the reason why I picked Joey Gallo is he's on the extreme opposite end, right? I'm not saying that this is where Eric Hosmer should be. I'm just going to use these examples to show extreme differences. Joey Gallo had a 21.7 average. This guy has no problem elevating the ball. Okay, so why does Joey Gallo elevate balls versus somebody like Eric Hosmer? Well, if you watch the moving parts, right, I think we could all say that barrel depth is basically the same here. Now, this is BP. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, right? BP and game swings, and we're going to look at game swings here in just a minute. But, BP is a little bit different. The requirement physically with the timing moves and all those are obviously different in this environment than it is in the game, right? So, but I think you can see the moving parts anyways. They're basically accomplishing the same thing. I think most people would, look at Eric Hosmer's mechanics on the right and say, wow, his swing's way better than Joey Gallo's. Well, he's not going to elevate the ball. I don't care how his hands and arms, his body, how much it turns, it rotates, it swings up. He's not going to elevate balls, and I'm going to show you why. Okay? Here is Eric Hosmer, and we go back in history now. This is very important. What is a player's swing DNA? What have they been trained to do? That's going to prevent them from elevating the balls. Now, first off, let me tell you this. I have no problem with Eric Hosmer's approach. I love Eric. I'm a huge fan of Eric Hosmer. Dude hits balls hard, right? But he wants to elevate balls. So the approach he's using right now, I wouldn't say is a bad approach, obviously, or at least in this particular swing. If you have players that are doing this and you want to do this, that's fantastic. You can hit balls hard this way. But if you want to elevate balls, you better change some things up. So where does elevation come from according to the experts these days? Well, barrel depth. And obviously when Eric Hosmer was in high school or whatever, whoever coached him was telling him to hit down on balls. No, that wasn't what was happening. In fact, you can't be a top prospect and pound balls all over the ground. And none of these people, you see this lady over here watching, she's not going to be there watching if he's pounding balls on the ground. This guy with the camera is not going to be there with the towel around his neck, right, looking like a scout or something if Eric Hosmer was pounding balls on the ground. So here's the guy that said, my coaches told me to hit down on balls. Well, there's no problem with the bat going up here, folks, right? There's no problem with barrel depth behind him naturally. That's going to happen. You don't see him pushing his hands across his chest, hitting from the top down in this approach. Again, BP is a little bit different than a game situation, but nonetheless, this is his swing DNA. And if you see a negative movement in BP, you're going to see a negative movement in a game swing. If you watch any game swings in those years with the Kansas City Royals, right, where he had some pretty exciting years, he had barrel depth. That wasn't the issue. But I'm going to point out today, what is the issue? All right, so in terms of weight shift, if you are a player that uses linear movement as a primary goal, right, that as I move my weight, I'm going to push my weight forward. Some people call it falling into your front side. You're going to fall all the way into your front side and then hit. All right, again, is it wrong? No, but it is if you want to elevate balls consistently. And I think we all know Eric Hosmer's had a career where he elevated balls every now and then, but we see by his averaging that he doesn't do it as consistently as he would like to do. Right, and so any player that presses their weight forward, right, on top of the front leg, if you're trying to push your weight forward to land on a flexed front leg, and that's not, but that's what's being taught a lot these days, you can certainly hit that way. You can even hit balls hard that way, but you're not going to elevate balls for I think, very obvious reasons. Right, so we'll go back to this video. Again, looks to me like the same moving parts are working here, but I'm going to point out the main differences. So again, watch the weight shift of Eric Hosmer over here on the right. Now, he's made some improvements, obviously, in his overall mechanics from when he was a high school player, right? But you watch here, this effort to dive into his front side is still in his swing DNA. In order to elevate balls, right, you'll see guys, I just pick anybody that elevates balls. Nobody pushes their weight onto their front side. It may look like it sometimes, but I'm going to show you exactly the difference in these two players. Right? Again, one that elevates the ball, not one that's better, but one that elevates the ball versus one that doesn't. Okay, and Eric Hosmer needs to start finding ways to feel something like what Joey Gallo is doing here, Cody Bellinger's doing, Corey Seager. Here I go with Dodgers now. I've been watching a lot of Dodgers hitters lately, but this is what guys that elevate are setting this guy up to hit. Guys that don't elevate tend to really get up onto a firm front side. Somebody's talked to them about straightening their leg out a lot, hitting from a firm front side, and all these kind of things, which again is not wrong. But in terms of elevation, the guys that do it, the patterns that you'll see is that they're using their backside more in the swing. And so what is Joey Gallo feeling that Eric Hosmer's not feeling? Well, again, Eric Hosmer is feeling all of this linear movement, moving to get on top of his front side. You see almost this compression of parts once he gets to the ground. Everything's right there on top of one another, right? And so real quickly, I want to say that linear movement or forward movement, in order to maximize your power, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, in order to maximize your power, linear movement is necessary. We don't want to say, no matter what you hear in this video, my intent is not to communicate. We want to say stuck on our backside. We don't want to gain any ground or anything like that. But I would say that linear movement for most young players, and Eric Hosmer is the primary goal in a weight shift. And the primary goal in a player, at least that wants to elevate the ball, is going to be that they're going to always feel a presence in their backside in this weight shift portion of the swing. That they're not trying to move their weight on top of their front leg, that they're always trying to feel this presence. So if Joey Gallo weighs 230 pounds, he's going to try to feel this 230 pounds in his backside for as long as possible. There's a video of Cody Bellinger in 30 clubs in 30 days. where he's talking about this same feeling where he says, I tend to get forward a little bit. And it wasn't Cody Bellinger saying I lunged. Professional players couldn't lunge if they wanted to. It's not built into their swing DNA, right? But he said he does drills, the little step back drills and stuff like that to feel his weight in his backside. That's why these guys, this is why Joey Gallo here elevates balls better than Eric Hosmer, is because he knows that he's going to stay in his backside in order to annihilate a ball. And so what you have to do in order to feel that is that you've got to feel this mechanism, all of that, the hip flexors, everything there being more of a reaching mechanism as opposed to I'm going to take all of this, right, and brace it against this and push this way, right? That's the wrong idea. You're going to be steeper no matter how much you want to lay the bat down and all these things. You're going to be pushing your weight out on top, and so you're going to come in steeper or flatter than most guys that elevate balls, because elevation is going to be always using this feeling, staying here, staying here, staying here. And you can see the difference in their landing here, the compression that Hosmer feels on this front side, right? And they have the same swing, right? There's no denying. Basically, the way that they're moving the parts, the barrel depth that they're getting back there, there's no difference in that. But Joey Gallo is positioning his body in such a way, right, that he's going to get behind a ball and lift it more so than somebody like Eric Hosmer. Right, so here they are in a game, and the reason why I'm showing this is if you watch a player in the major leagues hit a ball on a tee, they don't look like their game swing. More kids are jumping at balls sitting still on a tee these days, and trying to work on my game swing on a ball sitting still. But you'll see pros will look completely different from the tee to their BP and then to their game swing, because what's different? The timing mechanisms are different. The requirement for athleticism is different, so you naturally see a lot of these differences. But what we can learn from what they're feeling in environments like this is that if I have a tendency that says I'm going to press my weight onto my front side, you have a player that's not really utilizing their backside to help elevate balls. And so you're going to see that in this portion of the weight shift, that Eric Hosmer, again, you see his torso kind of pushing on top of his front leg, whereas Joey Gallo, Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, well, a lot of Dodgers, most guys that elevate the ball have this presence where they stay in their backside no matter how far forward they're going to reach here. And obviously the body moves forward, right? And the body moves forward mainly, in my opinion, because once this guy gets off the ground and starts to reach in that direction, your body's not going to allow you to stay stuck on your backside. It's just not going to allow it. But you can see this presence for Joey Gallo, again, not a better hitter, I'm saying just elevates balls more than Eric Hosmer, is that he always is constantly focused on staying in that backside, because that's how he's going to get behind the ball. Eric Hosmer is still pushing his weight on top. You can see his torso compressing on top of his front leg. Some people would call this is the opposite of the rubber band, right? And separation, as he's pushing all of his weight on top of his front leg. The rubber band comes from these opposite forces working. This is reaching, and my body is resisting as it's trying to stay here. This is why players like Joey Gallo have separation. It's just this. I'm staying here, and this is reaching. When everything in this compartment, right, is reaching, and everything up here is saying I'm staying here, you're going to have separation. And the other thing is, if you watch this weight shift move, you'll see that this is a clear indicator of a player that stays in their backside, right, and throughout the weight shift, right, is that there's almost this point. You see how Joey Gallo gets to a certain point with his front foot. And this is a big move, by the way, that you're seeing over here on the left. You can see that his front foot's going to stop gaining ground altogether. Right there, it's just stopping. It's going straight down into the ground. This is a player that says, I'm staying here. This is why Joey Gallo elevates balls and Eric Hosmer doesn't, because everything about Eric Hosmer's approach is I'm going to push. The back leg really is non-existent, or the back side, I should say, for Eric Hosmer is non-existent compared to somebody like Joey Gallo. And you'll see this is why he ends up spinning in his hip socket back here, right? Almost like a squish the bug move. But let's face it, Eric Hosmer can hit. But he's not going to elevate like this. You can't elevate like this. If you watch what was the difference between a backside hitter and a front side, or just somebody that stands on the front side? And you see here at this portion of the swing, basically the same sequence. I'll go back one frame. Put a line down the piping of Joey Gallo's pants here. Somewhere in there, it's kind of crooked. We're basically giving Eric Hosmer a head start here. This sequence, he's a little further back in the sequence, so we should see a much more of him gaining ground with the back hip. And look at the difference as Joey Gallo's backside continues to work through the ball, right? And Eric Hosmer's that pinstripe is just not doing anything. In fact, these last few frames going into contact, his lower half's really doing nothing, right? Now, some people would say it's because Joey Gallo's dragging his back foot, and that's not true. The reason why Joey Gallo has a backside that's constantly working is because he's constantly feeling, in this phase of the swing, I'm in my backside. I'm firmly in here, right? No matter how far forward I go. And then once I get to the ground, you have that feeling, and you're going to transfer that. Look at that big load of his backside transferring through. Now, Eric Hosmer pushes his way to his front side. And this is why today's teachings, when the guys are telling you to land out on a compressed front leg like this, they also have to follow that up with, now you're going to do this with your back leg. You're going to drag it 3 feet, or you're going to pick it up off the ground. That is false mechanisms, and all in the name of you don't look like the pros like Joey Gallo or somebody like Bryce Harper is picking his foot up. Because kids don't understand what these guys are feeling. If you're pushing your weight to your front side, again, you're always going to lack some sort of ability to get that backside to transition through a little bit better. But you can see everything about what Joey Gallo is doing here on the left says I'm going this way when I hit. And everything about Eric Hosmer, the way he's kind of posted up here on his front leg, is going to say I'm going to be flatter through the zone. Again, is it wrong? No, I don't think it's wrong. But here's a guy that needs to elevate balls more. Eric, if you just start working, stop listening about swinging up more, getting more barrel depth, right? If you would just start buying into some of these ideas. If I could stay in my backside and reach with my front side, I'm going to set up this guy to hit. And that naturally is going to get me that's going to get my barrel through the zone like this, as opposed to when I stand on top of my front leg, I'm going to be flatter and steeper than most. Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. Thanks.